One of the world's most exceptional and most endemic ecosystems happens to be mangrove. Mangroves are exceptional from a variety of reasons. One of them is if you happen to go to Sundarban, you will go on to realize why is it that the mangroves are going to be so significant, so extraordinary, so exceptional. And of course, they are all beautiful of sorts. Nature is at its peak, and you see a variety of type of landscape that it presents. All in all, this is something seen to be believed, and it supports the type of plant life, vegetation life, as well as the type of animal life not found anywhere else in the world. And India hosts world's largest mangrove. Sundarban Delta happens to host the world's largest mangrove. It itself is almost like the size of a country. Mangroves belong to different groups. There are different families to which they go on to belong to. They are essentially woody plants, woody trees, and one of those families they belong to is Rhizophorus. Other is Acanthacea. The third is Lithacerae. Then fourth is Combrettaceae, and the fifth is Araceae. These are the five of them: Rhizophoraceae, Acanthacea, then Lithacea, then so on. This is what exactly it goes on to belong to. And they are found in 5 different zones all in all. These zones include one of them is a intertidal zone. Intertidal zones basically means that it is going to be in between high tide and low tide. And high tide and low tide basically means that is when the water rises high, when the water rises low, it is in between these two that the mangroves flourish or they're going to thrive. Sheltered shores, not exactly in those type of shores which are exposed to the wave action. Sheltered, that means where the waves cannot be very strong. Anywhere where the waves can be strong, they are not going to be found. Estuaries, that means where the rivers meet directly to the sea without an intervening delta. But then it is to a large extent protected as well. Then some of these type of tidal creeks like that of some of you who have known it, like Sir Creek, which goes on to be almost like that. We're going to find a maze of such type of creeks, like the Cody Creek and so on, so forth. This is the way that they look like. All in all, in this case, these are tidal creeks. And as for example, you can always go on to know Cody Creek is going to be one of them. Then Sir Creek is going to be another of them, and so on. These are called by the name of tidal creeks. Backwaters. Now, backwaters like the backwaters of Kerala, Vembanad Lake, and the adjoining regions. All of those people who have been in Kochi, all of those people who have known it, the national waterway of India that moves all the way from Kochi to Ernakulam and so on the sides of it. And if you have visited Alapudha, you have visited Vembanad Lake, you have visited Kumarkam, these are the backwaters of Kerala. That is where it is going to be found. And then lagoons, marshes, and mud flats. These are the areas which are the subtropical regions where the mangroves grow, and they grow in such a manner. They grow in such a way. Mangroves are the habitats, that is the habitat of the mangrove is going to be confined between latitudes 25 degree north and 25 and 30 degrees south. That is the latitudinal zone, that's the extent of it in the whole of the world. This is largely because it is only between these two zones that it is in between these two zones that the conditions are purely tropical in nature. Purely tropical, and mangroves are actually purely tropical in nature, as you can go to take a look at it as well. Now these are the areas when in the distribution of mangroves which are going to be significant only between these two places in some of these different type of continents, and most of these areas happen to be around this type of a latitudinal zonation. when you're going to take a look at the mangroves on a worldwide scale here, you're going to find it in Eastern America. That's the place in Eastern America. Eastern Africa, that is where it is. Western Africa in Guyana and other regions. India, not to talk about Sundarbans, Myanmar, Southeast Asia. In some portions of New Zealand, particularly the northern portion of New Zealand also, mangroves are found. And in Australia, some places like in Darwin Islands and Darwin region, which also happen to be purely tropical in nature. Worldwide, that's the way that is mangroves are going to be distributed. And India, it is going to be in Sundarban. This is the place in Sundarban, all along the eastern coast, particularly Godavari Delta, not to talk about Andaman Sea. And of course, all along this western coastal region, this is the place where mangroves are generally going to be found and they're going to flourish as well. Now, on a somewhat smaller scale, mangroves are going to be found in these areas as well in Kerala, particularly in the backwaters of Kerala region. So, mangroves grow in thickets. As we say, that they grow in thickets. That is the word that is going to be significant. They grow in thickets. It's not that they grow in the form of a single tree. That is going to be a good number of trees that are going to be associated with it. And that is the example of a thicket. This is the example of a thicket. And under some inhospitable conditions as well. This is largely because they belong to such type of a specialized plant groups which are not capable of flourishing in any other condition. And that includes regions of higher salinity, where the salinity is very, very high. Regions which are going to be having tidal extremes as well, that is the high tide and low tide is going to be very high. The difference between this, that is going to be very high. Heavy winds as well, that means the wind speed is going to be very high in these regions. The temperatures, of course, are very high because it is under these type of temperature conditions that the bacteriological action is going to be speeded up. And anaerobic soil strata, that means a soil strata that is going to be sans oxygen, and that goes on to make it pretty significant. Mangroves, therefore, as we say it, that is, it has abundance of moisture. This is going to be one of these conditions for mangrove. It has abundance of moisture. If there is no moisture, there is no way that the mangroves can go to grow. So that is one of these conditions. It derives its nutrients from the decaying organic matter. It's not from the soil. It's the organic matter that decomposes and decays, and that is what goes on to provide mangroves. Minerals which are coming from runoff, that is from the rivers, and it has maze of water bodies, maze of rivers that find themselves into it. It is going to be associated with abundance of sunshine, and when we are going to be talking about abundance of sunshine, basically it means that these are the areas where certain aspects are always going to be correlated. Abundance and sunshine means it is going to be associated with high degree of photosynthesis as well in these cases. The shade secures a home for all of them. Insects, worms, crabs, they are going to find all the type of crabs, prawns and fishes in this region. These are the shades. This becomes the habitat for all of those type of creatures in the region. There are, other than that, you're going to find various types of parasites, predators and saprophytes, which find support in this region. And that will go to include, as you're going to find it, snakes, birds, wildcats, worms, frogs, birds, what not in this place. Sea turtles, and particularly large type of sea turtles are always going to be associated with it. You can go to see these type of leopards, frogs, variety of type of frogs, and not to talk about these type of snakes as well, which are going to be found associated in the region. All of these type of creatures are part of it. These mangroves are responsible for filtering coastal waters. And by filtering coastal waters, mangrove form a nutrient-rich breeding ground. By filtering coastal waters, that is going to be the catchword in this. By filtering coastal waters, they're going to form this type of breeding ground for numerous species which go on to thrive in that region and which that thrive above and below the waterline. And when we are going to be talking about above and below the waterline, essentially we are talking about both of these conditions. That is above high tide and below the high tide water as well. That means it's not going to be only between the tidal zone, it is going to be all of the zone that is going to be adjoining the tidal zone region. And other than that, it's of course, it is home to an array of nesting, breeding and migratory birds. You're going to find it is going to be a place to hold your breath and you will going to observe it. These type of flocks of birds available in that region being found in that region and whatnot. These are the type of conditions that you find it available in this place. That's one component of it. Now, so mangroves are a certain type of specialized plant groups which are found in certain conditions. These conditions are associated with high humidity, high temperature, strong winds, intertidal zone, and so on. These mangroves also go on to be the ground for, and they also go on to hold the ground for a variety of type of parasites, birds, and also all of those type of creatures in this case. Now, understand this part. What we are talking about is that is all these mangroves, they have a certain characteristic, and one of these characteristics is going to be stilt-like root. Now, take a look at this root system. That is one root and associated with it going to be another root, associated with going to be another root, and taking a look at once again, take a look at the maze of these roots. Talking about this type of root, just going to take a look at it. Take a look at it, the maze of roots that you find in associated with these regions. These are the names that are going to be called as stilt-like roots. Stilt-like roots, one root associated with another one, and all of them going to support maybe one tree, maybe various trees as well in this place. This is the most important characteristic of the mangrove vegetation. That is the maze of the root system that are going to be found all along in these zones. So the first part is that the trunk is supported by stilt-like roots. That's one. The second is the second of this characteristic is that it is going to be in this intertidal zone. Take a look at it. That is, how is it that the water moves up and moves down? And that is intertidal. That means water will going to move up and it will going to move down. And that is going to be a cyclic aspect of it. There is movement of water up and below in that manner. And that is why exactly mangroves are going to be completely unique, capable of not flourishing in any condition other than this place. That's a part of it. Second is, at low tide, the tree above appear emerging out of the soft mud, because that is how exactly the stilts happen to support it. This is how the stilts will go on to support it. One stilt, another stilt, another stilt, still another stilt. These are the stilts that will go on to support it. And these stilt-like roots, they seem to be emerging out of the soft mud in this case. So at low tide, the tree above appear emerging out of soft mud. The mangroves exhibit a very high degree of ecological stability. And when we are talking about ecological stability, we are essentially talking about such type of stability like which cannot be disturbed. And if one is going to be disturbing it, then the mangroves are really going to get disturbed of sorts. But then it's fragile, but not to an extent that one can go on to think of. It's still going to be pretty stable. Most of these mangroves go on to be in a waterlogged saline zone between sea and the terrestrial environment. Between the sea and the terrestrial environment, that goes on to be the place where the mangroves actually go to thrive and they go on to live in this place. Roots in this case are going to be submerged under water at high tide, and when the low tide is there, all the roots are exposed onto the surface, and all these stilts are going to be visible. That is, at high tide, all of these roots will go to get submerged, and at low tide, all of the roots will go on to become visible onto the surface. Of course, these forests are very, very dense, and when they are going to be dense, they are going to be impenetrable because of the dense growth and also because of tangle of climbers that are going to be found in the region. So there is a maze of climber that goes on to get associated with the trees. When you go and take a look at the adaptation of these mangroves, you will go on to observe that part. One of them is that you will go on to find a lot of pneumatophores in this place. These are going to be pneumatophores. And the function of these pneumatophores is that allows oxygen diffuses through these spongy tissues of the pneumatophores to the rest of the plant. They seem to be emerging from the soft mud. As you can go on to take a look at it, this is how they seem to be emerging from the soft mud. These are pneumatophores. That's one. Second is pneumatophores are breathing roots that arise from the cable roots. If you're going to consider, this is how mangroves are, and these are the pneumatophores that go into emerging out of it. Then there are going to be cable roots that radiate from the trunk. These are the cable roots that are radiating all away from the trunk, and they are fine feeding and they grow in a radial manner here. Then you're going to find prop roots. These are going to be prop roots in this place. Now these prop roots, they provide, they descend from the trunk to provide additional support because the trees are going to be very, very heavy. They are hardwoods and they all go on to be aided by such type of prop roots in the region and in this place. So that's going to be another part associated with it. Of course, you're going to find a lot of pneumatophores also in the region. Additionally, you have a specialized root membranes in some mangroves which prevent the salt from entering their roots. This is where it is. And the plants will go on to have a good amount of a salt accumulation. Salt may accumulate in older leaves and before they fall. That means all the salt that has got accumulated, that will ultimately go itself mix in it. There are going to be a good number of salt glands in the surface layers of leaves which go on to secrete salt. That we are going to be talking about salt excretors. These plants have such type of salt excretors in these places. And pneumatophores has been already talked about in this case. So when you go on to take a look at it and a detailed look at it, you will go on to find it. This is water level at the high tide, water level going to be at one different type of a tidal region, high tide, low tide, and so on. That is how the still tracks going to be found in this place, and that is this type of a leaf where the salt is going to be accumulating in the region. You will going to find these type of pneumatophores, such as are the type of pneumatophores that you find it. Now pneumatophores they grow upward and above the saline muds. That is the way that they are growing it. Take a look at it. This is the way, and it looks exceptional. The roots also grow from shoots and reach the soft mud around the main stem to provide a stability of it. This is how exactly they will go to find it, from the main shoot to provide a stability, because these trees, as we talked about, they are very heavy and these are continuously subjected to tidal forces. They breathe through microscopic pores in the bark. These are all of the trees going to be having a thick bark, and that is the way that they go to breathe around also. There are many adaptations. Characteristics are one part of it, but then there are going to be many adaptations which go on to add to the characteristics. And as you can go on to take a look at it, these adaptations develop because of conditions of climate, because of conditions of soil, because of conditions of tidal zone, intertidal zone. Some of these are going to be peculiar adaptive morphological conditions. Now, these peculiar adaptive morphological features have and some physiological mechanism go on to be associated with one of them is breathing roots. That is, the roots are one which go to breathe. Breathe means that means they are associated with the oxygen. Second is that salt excreting leaves. Now, when we are talking about salt excreting leaves, then it's completely different. When we are talking about salt excreting leaves, it basically means that there are going to be glands on leaves through which salts are absorbed by the roots and they are excreted as well. Glands on leaves. So which salt there are glands and salt is going to be absorbed, or they're going to be excreted as well. And as you see it, this is the way that the plant is going to look like with a good amount of a salt deposit. And salt accumulates in older leaves before they are going to fall. Leaves are thick, they are succulent type, and that are fresh and store fresh water they are thick in the sense that is you take a look at it, they're going to look like they are almost made of sponge and rubber. That's the way it looks like here. On all of these leaves, there is a waxy coating on leaves of some of the mangrove species, and that seals in water, and this is the way that they are responsible for minimizing evaporation as well. Additionally, there is high concentration of liquid in their cells. High concentration of liquid in their cell, that is saprophytes, prevents the loss of cell turgidity. One of these adaptations is viviparous germination. Now, viviparous germination is about seedlings growing on parent trees and avoiding saline conditions in juvenile stages. That means they do not go on to grow from the soil at all. They go on to grow on parent trees. That's one. And once they are germinated, then the seedlings grows into the propagal thereafter. That means when they are strong enough in this case. The mature propagal then drops into the water and gets transported to a different spot altogether by some currents or by any means possible. Eventually, they are the one that going to take root in the solid ground. Now, this is the complete mechanism of the propagation of how is it that germination takes place. And what is a viviparous germination? Mangroves also provide a natural habitat for a variety of living species. Now, these living species are going to be so many of different types. Of course, they are going to be the natural habitat for a variety of these type of living species. And as you can go on to find it, it's going to be, of course, it is going to be these tigers, it is going to be some of these birds, some of those reptiles as well, not to speak of snakes, and of course, the omnipresent crocodiles as well. So, they provide a natural habitat for a variety of living species, both animals and plants. And the habitat of mangrove is extremely conducive to numerous forms of life in this case. This is largely because of the amount of nutrient availability that is there as a part of it. Now, you can always go on to take a look at the entire gamut of the animal life that is found in this region. That is where ecological significance comes into play. That is ranging from small creatures, some of those that you may not have ever seen it, to the Royal Bengal tiger, who mostly go on to prawn in the water region, and they have very strong shoulders by way of which they can go on to pick up their prey from the water, and they can go on to hang it on the top of the tree as well. They are the strongest tigers one can go on to imagine. For them, other ecological processes continue. One of them is, of course, is going to be filtering process. Now, filtering process is a part of it, and filtering process is the one that is responsible for transporting some of or allowing some of these to germinate, but it also prevents harmful sediments reaching coral reef and the seagrass meadows also. Other than that, mangrove vegetation is responsible for arresting the movement of soft mud, because this is soft mud that goes on to work as a nutrient. It also provides effective control of the soil and mineral nutrients from flowing into the sea. It's not that they are separated. That means they provide effective control. All of those nutrients do not flow into the sea. And if they go on to flow to the sea, then the entire purpose of the mangrove vegetation is going to be dissolved in this case. Now, mangroves also provide a fertilization to variety of type of plants in this region. They, of course, provide fertilization to the sea. And if the sea is going to be near to the mangrove areas like the Sundarbans, then they are going to be really, really very fertile. There are many other fishes as well that are going to spend some amount of time here as well in the mangroves in the juvenile stages. And then that is fishes spend time in the mangroves as juveniles or adults. And then thereafter they can go on to migrate here or there also. Mangroves present an important role in the protection of the coastal areas, particularly when there are going to be storm surges or tsunamis. Now, just going to take a look at it with this type of a thick vegetation all in this region. Even if that there is a tsunami wave that is going to be affecting this region, it won't be able to reach too deep into the surface. Even if there are going to be storm surges are going to be common during tropical cyclone. So even these storm surges are not able to prevent and not able to affect the whole of the coastal area. Now, how is it that they're going to protect it from tsunami is by these thick woody salt marshes. That means there is a chain of it. These thick woody salt marshes, which are going to be called as halophytes. Halophyte means HAL, that is salt. HAL means hal, that is going to be the prefix for salt. Phytes is the plant, that is a salt tolerant plants. Now, these salt tolerant plants act as a natural shock absorber by dissipating the destructive waves, because as the waves go on to be destructive, imagine if these waves are going to be destructive in this cases, then these plants act as a natural bulwark from this type of destructive waves, and they act as a buffer to such type of erosive activity as well. Then river and land sediments are trapped by the roots. All of those still type roots that we saw some time back, they are the one which are responsible for arresting these sediments and these nutrients. And that's how they are responsible for slowing down erosion as well. This is one picture, this and one small animation that can go on to show you if it is that there is the coastal area and that is where the mangroves are. To what extent is it that they can go on to work against it? And how significant it is that they are going to be in this case. That is the whole of the area behind it is going to be left completely protected. The entire of this area is left completely protected because there is a mangrove vegetation which is responsible for protecting this type of a coastline. Mangroves, of course, they go on to stabilize the whole of the coast, and they stabilize the shoreline and act as a bulwark against any encroachment by the sea. This largely because with such an extensive root system, that is going to be very natural. They're going to form a natural barrier. With such an extensive root system, this type of a natural barrier is going to be very much expected in this region against any type of violent storm surge or any type of flood. So, even if it is that there is a very strong tsunami that is affecting the region, the cause of the dissipation of energy of the tidal or the tsunami waves, saving the land from being started, that they keep the whole of the region completely safe. And of course, this is the basic reason that we're going to say that even if there is a storm surge that is generated because of a change in the temperature condition, a change in the climatic condition, a change in the frequency of the tropical cyclones, they are always going to be very, very safe. And that's the basic reason that we'll always going to say that mangroves must be planted and must be protected at all possible costs. The ecological significance continues. And as we say, there is mangroves are carbon sinks. They are carbon sinks because they go on to fight against global warming. they are responsible for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. That is number one. That's how they are going to be significant. They remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, like most of the trees. But then mangroves are very, very dense. So the amount of removal of carbon dioxide by the mangroves is always going to be very high. Second is that mangroves are also responsible for storing within the plants all of those carbon that have been removed, that is going to be stored within the plant. When the tree branches and leaves, and when the tree branches out, the leaves going to die out, they are submerged under the tidal water. And because they are going to be submerged, the breakdown takes place. They slow the breakdown of the materials, and in this process, by slowing down the breakdown of the materials in that region, they are responsible for a large amount of a carbon storage in the region as well. We're going to find it, understanding it in a somewhat better manner here. That is, the first part is that of photosynthesis. Mangroves take up atmospheric carbon dioxide through their stems, branches, and everything, and goes on to fix it here. The second part is, as you see it, that is in form of a sequestration. There is the carbon containing leaf systems and branches going to fall. They accumulate in the sediments. I mean, these sediments are going to be rich in the form of detritus, and that is where they go on. That's the place that they are responsible for burying all the carbon that they have taken along with themselves. And these are the regions that are going to be responsible for the long-term removal of the carbon and long-term storage of the carbon as well. And the third is the carbon remains in storage unless it is going to be eventually released through respiration or mangrove sediments being disturbed. And that is why we go on to always express our doubt if what happens if these are the sediments that are going to be disturbed. Now this is something that is not going to be known to the so-called industrializers who are out to manipulate the entire of the world. Why? Because they are only going to be talking about their carbon emissions, factories, industries, money, GDP, and only GDP. Now, these are some of these aspects where any amount of disturbance in the sediments by severe natural hurricanes, severe natural events can also be there. Human activities, that can be excavation, that can be dredging, that can be logging, and this exposes the buried carbon that is in this region to long-term effects. And if you imagine that all of this carbon that has been buried here, if that has been so released in this place, what will go on to happen? Other than that, they are of immense economic significance as well. Economic significance, you can go to take a look at it. So many different type of trees, so many different type of, in this case, flowers, in this, and find these flowers going to be of all hues and colors, and so many different type of fruits that are part of ecology, that are part of economic significance as well. That means you can go to utilize them economically. They are the ones that support rich microbial floral components. And when we are talking about floral component, we are talking about the plant life. And they constitute important ecological asset and economic resource in the coastal marine environment. That's the reason that they are going to be rich assets, economic assets. They are, of course, but at the same time, they are fragile ecosystem and they require always to be protected in this case. So all of this biodiversity that mangroves are going to be associated with, that can always be monetized and that can always be turned into some monetary benefits, because the biodiversity richness in this case is simply unsurpassed. So needless to say that they are rich in biodiversity, and there are potential sources of undiscovered biological materials that may go on to benefit the mankind. And think of it, that can be antibacterial compounds, which may go on, some of them possible, that some of them may go on to help us fight out whom? Fight out even COVID as well. Who knows that part? They are pest resistant genes as well. So they can be used in farming as well. This is something that can be done. It all depends on the knowledge economy and the type of a knowledge economy that we can go on to create for them. Taking a look at it, there is the biological activities. Mangroves are associated with secondary metabolics and that go on to lead to biological activities. So they produce antioxidants, antioxidants, and then anti-inflammatories, antimicrobial matter, anti-cancer, and neuroprotective, so many of them. Now, with so much amount of a protective cover in this space and with so much amount of a protection that mangroves can go on to give, now needless to say that mangroves are going to be a real resource of sorts. Mangroves also provide livelihood, and with so much amount of economic resource at the disposal, it's natural to think that mangroves will be able to provide livelihood. And how is it that they are going to be doing it so? That is, the benefits in this case are going to be aquatic products like fish, prawn, crab, mussel, oysters, all of them. They can be extracted, they can be utilized, they can be sold, they can be exported. Wood products can be used for the purpose of timber, house building. And can you imagine, people in these regions which are going to be rich in terms of wood products, they are constructing their so-called house by bricks, by cement, by mortar. Then grasses, wax, honey, tannin, dye, and thatching material, all of them are derived from mangroves itself, not derived from anything else. That they are the ones that are responsible for doing it so. That's another part associated with it. Mangroves also go on to encourage ecotourism. They encourage ecotourism and sustainable, such type of sustainable tourism offers a lot of activities like of course sports fishing that we talk about, kayaking, bird watching tours. These are the ones that are always going to be there. Bird watching means that means you can go to find a variety of birds. Some of them going to flying, some of them are related to it. Kayaking is what you go to see me behind in this case through these narrow water bodies. Sports fishing for the purpose of entertaining yourself. This is all going to be about economic significance. Now, mangroves therefore are significant, and significant. There is no way that we can go to say it in any different terms that mangroves are not significant. There have been many threats to mangroves. Now, despite the significance, there has been a perceptible decline in mangrove vegetation. This mangrove vegetation has seen a perceptible decline and a very fast decline. That is why we're going to call it as at an alarming rate, both qualitatively and quantitatively. Perhaps even more rapidly than that of a tropical forest, and much of what remains of mangrove right now is in a degraded condition. These are the type of pictures that show you that how degraded the mangroves have gone on to become now. It is a real cause of a concern for not only India but for the whole of the mankind as well. The reasons, the threats to mango and the reasons behind it are many of them. One of them is going to be, of course, they are going to under immense pressure. An immense pressure because of felling of trees. Felling of trees for what? Imagine people constructing their houses, and that too with the help of bricks and mortars in this case. Encroachments because of road construction, a spread of urban growth in these regions, hydrological alterations. Of course, you're going to withdraw water, you're going to divert water. So that is hydrological alterations. Using certain type of chemicals for the purpose of farming is going to be a chemical spill in this region as well, because most of the people try to convert into farmlands. And sea level changes may have been taking place and is likely to be taking place in the future. Now, all in all, local communities have often overexploited fisheries, and they are the one who have harvested mangroves as well at the same time. And when we say that they have invested in and they have harvested mangrove. That goes on to mean a lot of things. You take a look at this picture and you can go on to see the type of ravage that have been brought onto the mangrove region. This has been a mangrove region, and you can imagine that the whole of the greenery of this place is completely gone, and it has been converted into something that is a for economic reasons. If not for anything else, it is only for the purpose of economics and maybe for the purpose of earning money. There are other factors as well. For example, timber is widely used to produce timber that is going to be obtained out of mangrove, that is going to be widely used for producing charcoal, tannins, resins. Now, these are all the things for which the raw material is going to be available only in these regions. And that is why it is a cause for concern to us. And when we say it's a cause of a concern to us, it means that mangroves are under real threat. Now, understand it in a different manner altogether. Many parts are affected, of the affected areas in mangroves have been replaced by townships, people constructing almost like cities in this place. Some places, hotels and tourist resorts as well, as if they don't go to find any place. Now, you can imagine in a mangrove region like Navi Mumbai region, that is a mangrove place. And what exactly that we are trying to do in these regions. This picture will let you know a complete stark difference between the mangrove vegetation that is going to be here and that of an urban landscape that is going to be found. People are replacing it with golf courses also in these places. They are using some factories. Of course, not talk about shrimp and prawn farming, coastal highways in these regions. And if people don't want to find a place, they go to mangrove areas for the purpose of building their houses. And if there is any scope for refinery construction, people do that as well. And that is where the problem lies. That is a real cause of a problem in this case. The problem keeps on continuing. That is, we are talking about threats. That is, there is good amount of a diversion of fresh water for maybe drinking purpose, maybe for any other reason as well, for agriculture activity as well. There has been a perceptible change in the quality of the water, and that is that to increase salinity. If you withdraw that fresh water, or if you go on to, let's say, desalinize that part, then there is bound to be an increase in the salinity of the soil. Now, maybe that the mangrove regions happen to offer you that you cultivate it for the purpose of prawns and shrimps, but now think of it. We are talking about indiscriminate collection of prawn juveniles. That means even before they have grown to an adult size, you withdraw them. And when you withdraw them, of course, you make it sure that their germination doesn't go on to increase. And that means that they do not go on to grow at a faster rate as well. And if fisheries are going to be there, like true human beings, over exploitation of all of those type of fishes in this region. Now, you can take a look at the picture of it, that is, with so much amount of a stone being kept in this region or thrown into it. This is a recipe for disaster because it goes on to affect the hydrological stability of the whole of the place. So if those type of dangers were not going to be enough, now new dangers are coming up. One of these new dangers is going to be contamination. That is the contamination seeping into groundwater and finding its way into mangrove forest. That is where you contaminate with chemicals, you contaminate with whatnot, and then that finds its way to the mangrove forest region, and then you're going to be having an intake as well. Eutrophication caused by increased runoff from the adjacent farmland. Eutrophication is when there is an increase in the nutrient activity of the water body, that is eutrophication. That is a trophic, that is food, and it is eutrophicated. That means the amount of nutrients available in the region goes on to increase. So if they are farmlands and they are using fertilizers, all of them will go on to be washed into the region. An increase in the boat traffic, and because that is going to be brought about by increase in the coastal waterway as well, and God forbid, there is any oil spill. And if there is an oil spill, the amount of a danger that can be done is simply unimaginable. That there was one such type of oil spill that took place in and around Mumbai region. And you know what happened? The whole of the plant communities affected by it turned blue, all in all. And because that's largely because it was toxic. Thane region, Mumbai region, all of those places, they turned completely blue in this case. No threats continue, and they're going to continue in the form of loss of biodiversity, especially from old grown forests. It is unlikely to be regained for decades and maybe permanently lost. That is, once you're going to cut it, once you're going to chop the trees, that is going to be cut forever. It's very, very difficult to allow it to be grown. That's going to be one of them. Second is that species become locally extinct due to excess fragmentation of the habitats, one habitat, another habitat, the third habitat. All of these habitats, they are going to be getting itself degraded, and some of these species in that place, in situ, locally, will go on to become extinct. If tree felling goes on to be taking place in large amount, then tree felling has let in large flocks of animals for grazing in, and has resulted in widespread damage in this case. The damage is compounded. The damage is going to be having a domino effect. That means one damage leading to another, to another, to another, and so on, so forth. Having talked about all of these factors, that is, mangroves are getting degraded, mangroves are having a threat, mangroves are under some problem. The only way that we can go to conclude it in the form of conservation. That is, the world community in this case have to realize that conserving the essentials and conserving the mangrove is going to be the prime target. It must be restored, it must be conserved. Then second is strict legislation to protect mangroves in place in many countries, and that is something that we can go to emulate as well. At a world level, the world community has to realize that preservation of nature, and particularly mangrove vegetation, is going to be the most important task. In India, mangroves are being selected for absolute conservation, and with mangrove vegetation plans, mangrove management plans are being drawn. These plants are going to be drawn in a variety of type of places. They have been in Sundarbans in West Bengal, Pichavaram in Tamil Nadu, it has been Kutch in Gujarat. Of course, Andaman Nicobar Islands are also part of it, and they are the ones that have been identified for the purpose for conservation. Some of the states like that of Maharashtra. What Maharashtra has done is Maharashtra declared the mangrove species as protected by law. That means it was essentially a fallout of one example that we just discussed, and that was there has been an oil spill, and that was responsible for making the plants change their color to blue, and that is what has stimulated this type of an action by the Maharashtra government. Other governments are going to be a bit generous. Mangrove parks are also being built in Goa and Maharashtra, and it is hoped that concerted and coordinated action by different authorities in India will allow a greater amount of conservation practices to go on, and will be able to conserve it in a better manner. Mangrove conservation must be part of it, largely because our coastal areas are going to be very, very fragile. And because the coastal areas are going to be fragile, that's why it is always going to be having a major problem. You can imagine if the nature is going to be so beautiful like the one that you're going to see it behind. If you're going to take a look at it and take a look at once again, you'll find it how beautiful it can go on to be with all of those type of creatures roaming around in this region. This is the last thing that we want. The last thing that we want is to lose them, and the last thing that we want is to lose them to such an extent that we are not even in a position to retrieve them. We have to understand it's a majestic gift of the nature, and there is no option other than to save it. Save it by hook or by crook. Our future, the future of the humanity, everything depends on that.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.